Hey everyone, it's Brian from distillationsbl, and I'm excited to start this new series with you where I'm going to be watching and reacting to John Vervaeke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. A quick preamble, there's several reasons why I think that this is a good idea. His work I've been drawn to. He gives off a vibe that he is an expert in his fields. He really knows what he's talking about. And so I'm drawn to him for that fact. He has a vibe that I think very much is speaking to the sort of position that I'm in, my current situation. I am a recovering addict. I'm in recovery for a little bit now. I have ADHD. I was an atheist for most of my life, a militant atheist, up until maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I was an undergrad in philosophy and started to encounter different thinkers in different positions that opened me up to the possibility of there being arguments for other views that could be worth looking into. I was also in this sort of seeking orientation. I came across the puer aeternus archetype through Carl Jung's work. I think it was some YouTube video that I watched, and that really struck me as being a very good diagnosis as to my archetypal symptomology, I guess you could say. I was acting out lots of things that lined up with the puer. I am possessed by the puer archetype, I think is the correct way to say it. It's not that I am a puer, but it's that that archetype is living through me in consequential ways. And so I'm trying to address that. And I think part of also now being a part of recovery is that I am learning about the value of community and how important it is to get outside of my comfort zone and try to get involved with communities and act out a little bit of courage in that way. And so I think reacting to John's series will be informative for my situation and can also kind of give me a stepping stone into this conversation that is happening right now. There is something going on here, and in whatever way I can be a part of that, I would like to. And one last thing is that I think that there is a difference. There's something more to simply consuming content versus reacting to it. That's the term that online you would use, I guess, in the YouTube space, is reacting to it. There is a more active participation that will come from me as opposed to doing the dishes and having a video on in the background. If I am at least going through the motions of, okay, this is some sort of reaction where it will prompt a more reciprocal back and forth. And so it's not just coming in, I have to do some work here as I'm watching. I hope you enjoy. This is the first of a 50 video series. There will be a lot more to come. And thank you for tuning in and let me know what you think. All right, let's jump into it.
I've produced a lot of videos on a lot of various topics. Some of you have perhaps seen them. But what I want to do now in this series is draw it all together and present to you an overall unified argument.
So just before he goes on to this next point, he is making an overall argument, I think was the term he used. So from my philosophy undergrad and taking a intro to logic course, an argument to my mind is a very isolated thing. It's premises, conclusion. It's 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines maybe of propositions and premises, then, leading or entailing a conclusion. So argument in that technical sense, to my understanding, is a singular thing. And so lots of times in different videos that, or when John is talking, he talks about these long arguments. That's something that is new to me, that someone can make a, maybe it's a series of these more isolated arguments that build on one another and can lead to a integrated, comprehensive, more sweeping conclusions based on a complex arrangement of other arguments. There's going to be a lot of that in this series, I'm sure, is building up smaller arguments into larger conclusions. And so I think I need to maybe look into that a little more. What exactly goes into, you know, the more, the first thing that comes to mind is that the more arguments that are stacking on top of one another, the strength of the overall is going to become weaker and weaker, because the probability that any one of those pieces is going to be wrong, or one of the premises might be wrong. Let's say all of the reasoning is perfectly deductive and the whole thing is kind of checking out, but if a premise is false, and then the conclusion would be false, and if that is stacked in a certain way where the whole thing needs to work for the whole thing to be coherent, doesn't introducing more and more isolated arguments into this configuration actually lead to the whole thing being weaker? I don't know. But then I think, we'll see other sorts of things like, abductive reasoning, and, there might be a strength in lots of things pointing in a similar direction. Then the strength might actually be improved if you have a whole bunch of complementary arguments coming from different places that are all moving in the same direction. And I don't know, that could probably get pretty technical pretty fast, of like, how does that all work? Okay, and let me just say, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I was an undergrad in philosophy. Every once in a while I try to pick up my old logic textbook to get back into it, and I'm still struggling through the autodidact part of my personality, or what have you. So, but again, we're kind of winging it here. So, well, let's just keep going.
There is an increasing interest, both academically and in the public at large, in the topic of wisdom, something that people did not talk about very much not that long ago. Well, wisdom is now a very hot topic within psychology and cognitive science. And books.
That's pretty cool that wisdom is now a hot topic in cognitive science. And yeah, that almost just doesn't seem to go together, because when I think of wisdom, I think of like fictional books talking about a wise wizard or something. When I think of wisdom, I think of wizard, I think of stories. I feel like everything from popular culture or growing up, wisdom, it signifies something, but it's almost so loose. It's so, and that could just be because all of my engagement with any instance of the word wisdom has been a very sort of shallow, surface level example. To hear that, when I hear cognitive science, I mean, science, okay, science, it's got that power to it. But cognitive science to me is such a hard nosed field. To hear that there's cognitive scientists taking wisdom seriously is like, whoa, what does that even mean? Like, how could that even happen? I thought wisdom was just this much fluffier, airier, maybe even fantastical, because I'm thinking of Gandalf and I'm thinking of Dumbledore. Those are two wise figures. Okay, those were my obsessions growing up, was Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. I mean, that was my entire life. And so when I think wisdom, I think those two white beard, wizard figures. And so cognitive science and wisdom going together, it's, I'm just excited to see where this goes, because that's notable.
Of course, there's increasing academic and public interest in psychedelics. I just gave a talk earlier this week at Yale about psychedelics and the increasing interest in psychedelics and psychedelic experiences. You're seeing radical things with them. People can be released from treatment-resistant addiction. They can overcome post-traumatic stress disorder. Like the normal with the best therapy, right? Solution rate for people with post-traumatic stress disorder is about, right? If things go really well, 20% or so. You introduce psychedelics into the therapy and you can get the healing rate up to 80%.
Damn.
So what's going on there? Why is there this interest?
I'm trying to remember the name of Michael Pollan. I read a book about psychedelics. He's a writer who earlier in his career talked about food. His beat was food. I think he was a journalist, and he wrote this book about psychedelics that I think it's Michael Pollan. And it was great. It was very interesting to hear about people with terminal illnesses who were sort of on their deathbed and knew that the end was coming, were, I think, given psychedelics and had almost these death experiences of going to the other side, so to speak, and realizing that there was something else going on. And then when they came back from this experience, then had a drastically different outlook on the end of their lives. It was a really great book, very fascinating. So this is interesting to hear, especially 20 to 80% in treating PTSD. That seems like a huge jump, crazy jump.
Right? There's an increasing sense, many people are expressing it, of losing touch with reality. We encounter more and more often in individuals and groups nihilism, expressions of cynicism, expressions of deep kinds of frustration and futility. You have the abandonment of trust in any of our public institutions. We're losing, right? We've completely lost any sort of faith or trust in our political system. We're losing faith in our judicial system, right? Religious affiliation is declining consistently throughout. People's participation in clubs, organization is in decline.
I mean, I'll just say the sense of losing touch with reality resonates very deeply. Maybe I'll get into that at a later time, but I went through a very severe, extreme phase of losing touch with reality. Part of it was my interest in philosophy and science and sort of all of it hitting me at once and starting to actually read outside of what was just going on in class. And I remember there was a birthday party that I went to in the city, and I remember, I was drinking, I was drunk, and I remember there was this moment where I looked at everyone and I just had this sense, these are just animals. These are apes who don't have any fur and somehow have this enhanced cognitive function that makes us humans, but they're just animals. Like, we're a bunch of naked apes arranged in a social situation, consuming alcohol. And I just remember being so separated from everyone who was engaged in the sorts of conversations that you would have at a party or in that sort of social setting. And there I was, just looking at everyone and feeling more alienated from them than I had ever in my life. In my entire life, I was just in the flow of socializing. I was on that level of those interactions, then all of a sudden, because I read a couple books about evolution and a book or two of philosophy, all of a sudden I was like, how are humans humans? Like, how is everyone here not totally floored by the fact that we are just these apes that somehow have broken through to this new level where now we can be socializing? It was so intense and destabilizing. And that was sort of the beginning of this descent into active addiction and rabbit holes and drug abuse and all sorts of stuff. And so I'll try to leave that for maybe other points in the lecture.
But what is this meaning that's come into crisis? Why do we hunger for it? How do we cultivate the wisdom, because that's what I'm going to argue wisdom is ultimately about, to generate, enhance this meaning? Wisdom is about realizing, in both senses of the word, becoming aware and making real. It's about wisdom.
Becoming aware, making real. Realizing, okay, yeah, like I realized that I became aware of that, and making real. Realize. The realization. Make real. Yeah, okay, so then that's maybe just more literally to realize something, to bring it into existence. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I know that sense of the word as well. So to make aware and to bring into being. That's cool. The double sense of the word.
It's about realizing meaning in life in a profound way.
Huh. Okay, realizing meaning
How do we
in life.
cultivate this wisdom? What does it mean?
Meaning in life. Did I not even realize that meaning in life is a thing that is important, that needs to be taken into consideration in the living of my life and the carrying out of my existence? So to bring it into awareness, but then also at the same time to bring it not just into awareness, but into reality, to realize it, that meaning in life is something that needs to be realized in that double sense.
And I'm not going to talk about that just practically. I'm going to talk, not just theoretically, I'm going to talk about that practically as well. What are some practices that people can engage in and are engaging in to try and address this need for the cultivation of wisdom?
Okay.
What role, for example, do mindfulness practices play within the cultivation of wisdom? So, here's the three questions that we're going to keep coming back to again and again and again. What is this meaning? Why do we hunger for it? And how do we cultivate the wisdom to realize it? So,
we cultivate the wisdom to realize it. So wisdom is the process of realizing that meaning in life. Interesting definition. I'm following him there.
why do human beings seek to alter their consciousness? In fact, not just human beings, other intelligent organisms seek to do this, right? Caledonian crows will tumble down roofs in order to make themselves dizzy for no other purpose than to alter their state of consciousness.
That was pretty cool. You're getting fucked up.
What is going on? Why does intelligence need to be conjoined to an altered state of consciousness? And why in particular have human beings developed very sophisticated processes for generating, harnessing, and interpreting these altered states of consciousness? We're going to talk about that in connection with shamanism and ritual. We're going to talk about that in connection to the flow state. This is when you're in the zone, and why people seek it, and why it's so powerful.
Yeah, just something that I think might have to come back to is altered states of consciousness, and where is that line between positive altered states of consciousness and negative? Because being addicted to a substance and always wanting to escape your current situation and hide in that other state of consciousness, because this state of consciousness of just not having any kind of alternating thing going on is so distasteful that you want to just get out of this and get into a thing that totally alters your state of consciousness, and that being, addictive versus, something positive, a flow state, a spiritual experience, and that sort of being an altered state of consciousness. Then something I struggle with, like the example I was talking about before, being at the party and seeing all of these naked apes that were configured in this way. It's like, I love philosophy, but is it because I'm just sort of getting high in a way? And I don't always love it. Actually, it's, I hate it as much as I love it. It's like all the time I wish I could rewind the clock and never have chosen to pick philosophy as my major in college, because life was so much simpler when I wasn't confronting all of these things. And so it's this back and forth of, even right now, I'm to even go through this lecture series, it's like I am trying to alter my consciousness. Or maybe it's a different process. Maybe he's referring to something different, and I'm not making that distinction. That it's not just that I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to address a problem and seek to understand it better and potentially solve it, versus just trying to feel a certain way. But sometimes a philosophical insight can make you feel a certain way. That's a theme that I feel like will probably come up again. I just wanted to throw that out there.
There's a subset of those mystical experiences that are very crucial. These are awakening experiences. These are experiences in which people come back from the mystical experience and say, that was somehow more real than this, and I need to change my world. I need to change myself. They engage in what L.A. Paul has called a transformative experience, what is also known as quantum change, a radical transformation of their lives. And we know, we've got good research now showing that they're right. Their lives get better after these awakening experiences. We're going to talk about that in depth. And dare I say it, maybe we can bring all of this together.
Just for the record, I went through a very intense spiritual experience, and I won't get into it. I don't know if my life got better after that. I had to go through active addiction for 8 years, and I think that was my attempt to treat my world sort of being turned upside down through a very intense spiritual experience. And so I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out, it's getting better now after finding recovery, but anyway, maybe another thing we'll get back to.
That means it'll be important to talk about foolishness as something different from ignorance. Ignorance is a lack of knowledge. Foolishness is a lack of wisdom. Foolishness is...
Ignorance is a lack of knowledge. Foolishness is a lack of wisdom. All right, I'm lacking a lot of wisdom then. Because I'd describe myself as very foolish. At least that seems to resonate to me in some way. Maybe it's from reading a bit about the puer and that sort of thing that has me thinking that way, but yeah, I mean, okay. So, wisdom.
We're going to have to talk about different kinds of knowing, some of them that have fallen off our cultural radar precisely because of the meaning crisis. We tend to have reduced all of the ways that the ancients talked about how we know to one thing. To know is to have a special kind of belief. And so
Yeah, epistemology has always used the hell out of me, and I haven't really investigated it to the same extent, which is not much of an extent that I have like metaphysics, philosophy of science, logic, philosophy of logic, that sort of stuff. Because epistemology, I'm not quite sure. It doesn't come natural to me. Uh, Knowledge, I don't know what knowledge. It's something true and it's in your head. Knowledge, it's the true thing in your head. That's a belief. I didn't know it was, where does belief come in? What is belief? He'll probably explain it, but I know that whole topic is thorny and tough for me to wrap my head around. So I don't have knowledge about knowledge. Ugh. Okay, so maybe that's a place that I should be looking into more because it's like a self-undermining position or something. I don't know.
We are very belief-centric, which is why we are so focused as a culture on ideologies. But it turns out that we're going to have a much more expanded notion of what knowing means. There's much more to knowing than having justified true beliefs. There's the kind of knowing that's involved in knowing how.
Justified true belief. I'm familiar with that. The Gettier problem and I don't know. At least I know Gettier problem. I know that. I've heard that before somewhere.
To catch a baseball.
Interesting.
There's the kind of knowing of what it is like to be having this experience right now. There's the kind of knowing that is knowing what it's like to be in something you're participating in, like a relationship.
And the philosophy of mind and the consciousness. I've definitely probably looked into that more. And so the what it is likeness to have an experience, qualia, phenomenal consciousness. But maybe I wasn't aware of how much that connects to the problem of knowledge. I still don't get it, how knowledge fits in there. But
this will give us a structural functional account of meaning. What is the structure of it? What are its cognitive processes? What are its cognitive mechanisms? How do they function? How can they fall into dysfunction?
Structural, functional. Sounds like a machine. Structure of a machine and then what it's doing. Very heavy machine metaphor. A configuration of parts is the structure. Probably use some mathematics, geometry, physics. Here's this structural machine. And the machine is doing something. Or maybe it's not doing anything. I don't know. Structure, function. To me, I'm just thinking of an engine or something. Wonder if that's what he means or if there's more to it.
But I don't want this to be an academic series. I do my academic work and I'm proud of it, but I want this to be for people who are coming to this precisely because of a genuine personal existential interest. So I will try to keep jargon and technicalities to a minimum.
Thank you.
I will have to introduce terms to you, and I hope to explain them carefully along the way.
Something that just occurred to me. I mean, the reason I'm reacting to this is because when I just listened to it, the first time around when I was just, I just was listening to it, doing other things, whatever. As I'm watching and something resonates or a little switch is flipped in my head and I'm like, okay, here's this thing, I gotta grapple with this thing. Now when I can pause and interface and grapple with this thing, it's gotta be moving me forward in a way that just listening would not be moving forward. I'll be putting this out on YouTube, but like, let's say I wasn't even, let's say I just engaged in this practice and just saved up all these videos of me reacting to this thing. Like, I feel like that would still elicit this sort of interfacing, grappling exercise to acquire knowledge. Is that what's going on? I have no idea because I don't know the first thing about this epistemology and all that. But for whatever the ultimate purpose is, or the reason, or the to awaken from the meaning crisis, is that what's going on? Is that what I'm hoping to achieve? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like what he was mentioning for people who are going through some kind of struggle here. I've been alone for a long time. Autodidact for, at least 8 years. And it's been fucking hell and terrifying and all these things.
Right. I think this is a continuum question. I think the deep connections between meaning making and cognition go deeply back into our evolutionary heritage, way before our humanity. But that's right. So the fact that I'm
way before our humanity, he's talking about evolution, I guess. So it's maybe a feature of life itself and not just Homo sapiens sapiens. It's something deeper.
Think about how deep this is in your cognition, this idea of like throwing, right? Right. Think about how you talk about how you have a project that you're working on, right? Project. You're throwing.
A projectile.
Or people will talk about, oh, there over there, there's an object. That means thrown against.
Really?
Or I'm the subject.
Object means thrown against. God damn, it's like I'm just learning definitions of words that I've never looked up.
That means thrown under. All day long, cognitively, you're throwing. That's because this.
I mean, that's crazy. Subject object distinction is so endemic to philosophy, or at least lots of current issues in philosophy. So it's all throwing metaphors. That's fascinating.
By the way, we're going to talk about that a lot in this series. How your cognition is very much participatory. You participate in distributed cognition, large networks of cognition. Meaning, way before the internet networked computers together, culture networked brains together in order to provide some of our most powerful problem-solving abilities.
Just something that comes to mind is I found this paper, this article by this guy Giles Constable or something, about letter writing in medieval times, and the way it was described in this paper sounded exactly like blogs or like social media, where letters weren't just from one person to another person. Sometimes they were like public facing. So it was like having a Substack or a blog, back in when blogging was huge or something. People were writing letters knowing that they were going to be read or going to be public facing by the public or by whoever their audience was, or maybe it was more like an academic journal or something. But the parallels between dynamics we see in social media now and letter writing in medieval times, it's very cool.
You say, okay, that's why you still do stuff that makes no sense. You meet somebody and like you do that, you stick out your hand and they grab it and then they move it up and down, right? This is to show you have no weapons. This is allow the person to touch you, to see if your hands are clammy or not. There's all kinds of intuitive stuff going on. I can feel how tense you are. Most of us don't pay attention to this stuff anymore, but it's there when you shake hands.
That's pretty cool. That's interesting. Or in NA, at meetings, everyone hugs each other, which is another level of I don't know, intimacy, or and especially with strangers, addicts, but Anyway, that's another thing.
When you ask, how are you? Now, again, that has become trivial, so we don't want an answer. How are you? We don't, well, somebody starts answering you, oh no. But originally, that reflects something. Because think about what important skill has to be enhanced for these rituals. I have to be able to take your perspective. I have to know what's going on in your mind. I have to know how you feel. I have to be able to move from a first-person perspective to a third-person perspective really, really well. Because if I can't do that, I'm not going to be able to trade with you.
Okay. I think, yeah, that's plausible. That makes sense. Is it absolutely necessary, or is it just advantageous and then selected for in some kind of evolutionary pressure way? Is it necessary?
Now, that ability to take enhanced perspective on others, especially people that you don't know, really means you have to develop an ability Daniel Siegel calls mind sight, the ability to pick up on other people's mental states. And here's the thing, as you start to increase your ability to pick up on other people's mental states, you increase your ability to pick up on your own mental states. And that, of course, is going to be part of the origin of things like metacognition and mindfulness.
I guess I get that, but I just am not sure. Is that sequence also, how sure are we of that sequence? That it was from trading and networks of trading that then called for the ability to empathize or put yourself in the shoes of another person, see through their eyes, mind sight, that then led to looking at our own selves in a personal way, in a subjective, thrown under way? Or is it possible that that could have preceded the other? I'm just wondering if that sequence is important. And I could accept that is the sequence, but is that a necessary step in this argument that came first? I'll have to look at that book, Mindsight. It looks really cool, actually.
Acceptation in biological terms is an evolutionary mechanism. So for example, I'm using my tongue now to speak. Okay? Tongues did not evolve for speech. If they did, all the animals that had tongues would be speaking at you, and that'd be terrifying.
Speaking at you. I mean, don't they make noises with their mouths and their tongues to each other? They're obviously not using our human language, but I know language is special, a la Noam Chomsky, and there is something unique about human language, but using language maybe as a metaphor, a metaphorical, an analogous thing, couldn't you say that there are some kinds of it's some kind of language, some kind of communication, animals with tongues to one another? Do they ever use their tongues to make sounds with their mouth to one another? I don't know.
Especially your cat. If your cat talks to you, I'm sure that would be terrifying.
Yes, it would.
So, in shamanism, what you have is you have a cultivated practice for altering your state of consciousness that taps into and exapts this enhanced mind sight, this enhanced ability to manipulate and control your mental state and your emotional state.
Okay, I get that, but I keep coming back to, is it just a historical fact that we know that trade preceded shamanic rituals? Wouldn't shamanic rituals also be kind of right there at the beginning? And I'm just struggling with the sort of economic lens. I mean, I know trade and economics are sort of synonyms. You know, I don't know exactly what the differentiation is for those two, but that and that is an incredibly archaic and fundamental part of who we are, is that trade thing. Wouldn't shamanism be right back there? I'm just trying to figure out the significance of the pathway here, and if it's an established fact that one preceded the other. Anyway, I'm kind of nitpicking here, or I'm on a hobby horse for some reason, but it just keeps on kind of. I need to look into that. I need to use his citations and check them out for myself.
Now I need to introduce yet one more other term, and again, this is going to be important. This is the idea of a psychotechnology.
That sounds pretty badass. I don't know. Yeah, just for some reason those two words coming together have some sort of vibe. Psychotech.
Okay, so technology means the systematic use of a tool. This is a tool right here, right?
Okay.
First thing to understand, and this is Andy Clark's phrase, you're a natural-born cyborg. Your brain has evolved across several species to use tools.
Andy Clark is the extended mind thesis. Supersizing the mind. Andy Clark, the philosopher of mind. I'm pretty sure. I know him. He's great.
In fact, when you start using a tool, even for a very short period of time, your brain will start to model it as part of your body. Look at this around me. The only thing that's natural here, biologically, is naked me. Everything else is a tool. Everything else is, these are tools. I wasn't born with clothing. I use this in order to modify my ability to move through environments and carry stuff around. This is a tool. This is a tool. This is a tool.
Yeah, I mean, this hit me back when I was first getting into philosophy, and I was reading some sort of philosophy of technology and probably more popular writers like Kevin Kelly, Kurzweil. I was kind of into that shit for a little bit. I mean, I thought it was so cool. But, reading Kevin Kelly and that sort of stuff, I started to look at my environment very differently, and how salient, to use one of Vervaeke's terms, how salient technology was in the environment, and also how grateful and lucky I was to be sitting in a nice temperature controlled environment. There's snow out there right now, and I'm sitting in this artificial construct that has my body feeling right, medium, perfect, Goldilocks zone. So, I mean, that's a privilege. And it's a complete artifice of the environment, with all of human history going into, the collective work of all these different humans coming up with how to put me in this thing and put you in that thing. And, everyone, everywhere you go, you're always, interacting with these technological spaces. And I think sometimes if you take a pause and you really reflect on that, it can be a mind-altering experience, and to try to hold that in your mind through every environment, and sort of think of yourself almost like you're a bee in a beehive. Like there's this hive that's been created by you and the other bees, and looking from the outside, a human looking at a beehive, the beehive is like, whoa, like, what is this thing? This is crazy. Look at the intricacies and the geometries of this wild, complex thing. Or an ant hill, or, the ant farms where you see all the stuff that they're building in there. And then just kind of take a step back and then, remember when you're flying in to the airport and you see on the natural landscape just this crazy network of lights and moving pieces. And it's kind of like looking at a beehive. If you could put yourself outside of the human perspective and maybe pretend that you're an alien looking at the Earth. Let's say it's an alien who is a caveman on their, or a caveman gets flown in and a caveman looks, it would be sort of alien technology, That's the point, kind of stepping out to see how alien our own space of techno environments really are. I mean, and again, it's this weird dual aspect of an insight or a mind altering perspective. It's cool, and then it's kind of alienating. It's really interesting. I'm like, wow, and like this is so cool. And then it's like, what the fuck? The fuck are we? Who the fuck am I? What how am I fitting into this crazy thing? Anyway, I could keep going. I won't. I'll spare you.
This is a tool. These are tools.
Yes. Alien tech.
Now,
Psycho
what's
tech.
interesting is that can be exapted. Your brain's ability to attach to a tool can move off of a physical thing onto a cognitive thing. But one of the main ideas here is what a shaman is typically doing is trying to disrupt the normal ways in which you're finding patterns in the world.
Okay. That sort of reminds me of Michael Pollan's book when he talked about psychedelics and what they do. And it's like you have neural networks that are reinforced and get imprinted, and it's sort of like going to a ski mountain and seeing a bunch of tracks going down the mountain of where people have skied. And taking a psychedelic is sort of like a fresh snowfall where all of a sudden all the tracks are gone and a skier can go anywhere and create new tracks. So breaking up, I mean, I don't know if that's breaking up the patterns versus like just a whole a fresh sheet, a whole new landscape. But anyway, that's reminded me of that.
So this is something I study as a scientist, right? Many of you may have seen this.
Nice.
All right, so this is called the 9-dot problem. You have to join all 9 dots with 4 straight lines.
Not 6.
You have to start the next line from the terminus of the previous line. And when people see this, they initially say, well, this is very easy. Of course I can do this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait, I missed the middle dot. Okay, 1, 2, 3, wait, 1, 2, wait, 1, 2. And then they pause. This actually turns out to be a very difficult problem for people to solve. Joining all 9 dots with 4 straight lines. But why is it hard? 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines. What was hard about that? Now when you do that, of course, people get angry at you. They say you cheated. You went outside the box.
Yeah.
You went outside the square. That's where think outside the box comes from. Now why that was hard.
Okay. Wait. Isn't there an implicit assumption when asking someone to solve that problem that's part of the rule set and that the solution lies within the dots? And so, sure, you solved it in one sense outside of the box, but not in the sense that the rules called for. And so, under one understanding of it, you haven't solved the problem. And maybe that problem is impossible to solve within those constraints. And if you just don't listen to the rules and don't accomplish the task by the rules set out, then have you accomplished, I don't know. This just seems like a semantic difference, or a different. We could go under the assumption of one set of rules, or we could go under the assumption of another set of rules. If you had told that person, and you are allowed to make sharp turns outside of the dots, that person might have come up with the answer, right? It's that they were just playing by one set of rules, and then if you tell them you can actually, here's this other set of rules, then you could solve the problem within that set of rules. I don't know. I don't know if I feel like what he's pointing to is a thing that probably has other examples of other problems. This one just seems like it could be a little fishy. I mean, let's see if he addresses. I mean, he did kind of say, people say you're cheating, and that's what I'm saying, I guess. So let's see if he addresses that.
Hard is because you projected a pattern here, the square. And then you engaged unconsciously, your skills of connecting the dots. When you were a kid, you'd connected the dots. And when you connect the dots, you're not supposed to do this, make a non-dot turn. If you do that, you won't get a picture of a picnic table. You'll get like an acid trip psychedelic thing, right? So.
Or it's just implicit when the person sets out that problem, hey, connect, blah, blah, blah. You're assuming that they are stipulating that rule, that it must stay within the dots. I don't know if that's like, oh, from childhood, I'm carrying this baggage of something that I learned from a connect the dot game. I think it's just that, yeah, it might just be sort of a implicit rule that's unsaid but assumed, that, hey, most humans we're all gonna agree to this kind of thing. And maybe it does come from connect the dots. I mean, that's fair too, but that's because implicitly that's the way that we've always done it, and we will continue to do it. It's like, hey, we're assuming that, you color inside the lines or whatever, unless you give me an expanded rule set, and then we can solve it other ways. I don't know. I'm getting hung up on this. I don't know why.
Unconsciously, you project a pattern, and then you activate the appropriate skills, and then you're locked and you're blocked. You can't solve that problem, not because of anything there in the data, but because of the way you have framed it. You have to disrupt your framing. We're going to talk a lot about that in order to get an insight. Now, let me tell you something, again, to start to introduce this to you. Saying to people, think outside the box, and this is kind of funny if you think about it, saying to people, think outside the box, does not help them with this problem.
Are you saying use a different rule set? You're allowed to make right turns outside of the dots? Is that what you're saying? I feel like if you say think outside the box, but you don't stipulate and we're playing by different rules, then sure, that wouldn't help. This particular example is really bothering me. I don't know.
Giving them the belief that they have to go outside the box does not help them to solve this problem.
Well, literally the box?
That's what I meant when I said you shouldn't reduce all of your sense of knowing to believing. What's involved here is not believing that you have to go outside the box. It's knowing how to go outside the box. How to alter your attention. How to change your perspective. So we're starting to see right from the beginning the connections between meaning making, altered states of consciousness, an enhanced capacity to be in touch with the world. And then what's the connection to wisdom? The word shaman means one who knows, one who sees, one who has insight.
One who knows, one who sees, one who has insight. Shaman. That's cool. As long as it's not an epistemological thing.
Shamans are considered wise people.
Okay. I need that. I need, that's the antidote for the fool. Then I need a shaman in my life. And in all seriousness, I think that's also why I'm drawn to John Vervaeke's work, is that I need a Gandalf, I need a Dumbledore, I need a guide.
And that's why we have all these words Like the word wizard means a wise
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it
I
for our
called
first
that.
video. You'll get a sense from this of
I should call this like a following the wizard series or something, or wizard school.
how we're going to proceed.
Hogwarts. Oh God. Going to get in your letter. This video is getting my letter to Hogwarts. Jesus Christ, it's literally
Thank you very much for your
wizard
time.
school is Hogwarts. All right, that was great. That was great. It was long. He covered a lot. I think in that whole thing, uh, we got, you know, Neo-Paleolithic something or other, 40,000 years ago, going back 200,000 years ago, very origin of Homo sapiens, I guess, and shamans, and I think maybe the most important thing was at the very beginning when he laid out kind of the full scope of what he's going to be doing. He gave an overview, a good overview of what awakening from the meaning crisis entails. So that was number one, video one. I hope you enjoyed following along with my reaction. I'm gonna have the full unedited reaction on Patreon, and this one on YouTube will be edited down, or also be way too long. So yeah, tune in for the next one. I appreciate you being here. It's the beginning of a journey. I think that this 50 videos, 50 videos, but 50 chances to grapple with his work in a way that elicits something aspirational in me. I'm using a lot of his language, I think that's appropriate. And yeah, we'll see what comes of it. So again, thank you for being here. Like and comment and subscribe and blah 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 blah. If you're so inclined, I would greatly appreciate it. And all right, see you on the next one.